Hello, everyone. Welcome to week six co-facilitator assignment. We're going to talk about sexuality. Sexuality is viewed as a central part of being human. Young children are curious about their sex organs at a very young age, and they actually get pleasure from them. The substantial increase in sex drive that takes place in early adolescence is the result of hormonal changes. Cognitive changes of adolescence play a part in the changed nature of sexuality as well. So, of course, you guys know we get two required readings for our co-facilitator assignment. And our first reading was by Ms. Deborah Tolman and Sarah McClellan. The title of the journal was Normative Sexuality Development in Adolescence, a Decade in Review. And a couple of key things I wanted to talk about, or that was mentioned, um, normative adolescent sexuality development is a comprehensive review of research done in the field of adolescent sexuality over a 9 year span. I think it was from 2000 to 2009 that these articles were compiled. And there was a list of 31 English language journals from different ranges of disciplines. These disciplines included psychology, public health, sociology, adolescence, women's studies, and sexuality studies. There were 710 abstracts that were identified. The researchers developed codes based on the themes that emerged from the abstracts rather than bringing a set of theoretically derived codes to data. So they kind of created their own little code. It was 25 codes that they used. And they discovered that there was a growing trend for research on the study of adolescents' sexuality. So after the 710 articles or abstracts were identified, retrieved, and coded, they realized that there was a more specific body of research that was identified. Those three areas of research were new perspectives on sexual behaviors, sexual selfhood, and sexual socialization. New perspectives on sexual behaviors. What constitutes a sexual behavior? Well, during the decade that these articles were compiled and the research was done, they saw this question driving more and more of their research in adolescent sexuality, pressing for the interrogation or the breakdown of what counts as sex by teens and in research settings. Well, research in the last decades reflects a growing recognition that sexual behaviors include a possible range of activities, leading to the increased need to actually specify what is a sexual behavior. For example, penile vaginal intercourse um, is a specific term, and oral and anal is recognized as their own unique specific terms that leads to other questions and other issues. So it really depends on your terms and what sexual activity or behavior that you are referring to. Um, Also within that decade, oral sex had actually began to be acknowledged as part of a sexual behavior. And it was brought up in the articles or in the study that young people perceived oral sex to be less risky and more acceptable. They also felt that it was less of a threat to their beliefs, more likely for them, and that a greater number of their peers have had it versus vaginal sex. Um, the study also showed that oral sex versus both oral and vaginal intercourse were less likely to, the young ladies that engaged in oral sex were less likely to become pregnant or have an STD, feel guilty or used. They actually, had oral sex. They felt like their relationship wouldn't become worse, or that they wouldn't get in trouble with their parents if they chose to engage in oral sex versus actually having intercourse. Also, during this time, a new sexual behavior emerged for study, and that was virginity. And of course, we know that virginity is the active choice to not engage in sexual behavior. Sexual selfhood. In the last decade, a body of knowledge about the sexual motivations and sexual desire of adolescent girls and women have emerged and quickly grown. Tobin's research tells us that adolescent girls' experiences of sexual desire identified a complicated landscape of social, material, and personal dilemmas that characterize girls' diverse experiences negotiate their sexuality. Also, an innovative direction in the past decade has been a new body of research on the development of a sexual concept. Researchers working on and with these concepts have investigated the relationships between sexual identity formation, sexual decision making, and sexual behaviors and outcomes. In the field of sexuality development and sexual identity, more specifically, one of the major shifts over the past decade has been the reconsideration of sexual orientation development. Also, one of the most important shifts in the previous decade has been around conceptualizing psychological motives for sexual activity and relationships among adolescents. Defining adolescents as capable of positively motivated sexuality has contributed to an upsurge of research on adolescence as a whole, beyond a particular focus on girls and young women. Across all adolescence, there has been interest in active decision making about having sex early, and early is considered before age 16, and having sex for the first time as part of a more expansive developmental process. Each of these areas of research places sexual decision making in the hands of young people rather than identifying and evaluating negative influences on them, and sets out to understand the process from the perspective of the young people themselves. Sexual socialization represents the social context in which adolescents develop sexual knowledge and experience. The context which impact adolescent sexual risk have been operationalized in various ways, including the role of neighborhoods and communities, parental communication, religion, and the overall developing recognition of the role of culture as a shaping factor. Understanding adolescent sexuality experiences and processes in context is consistent with the emergence of the perspective across the study of adolescence in the last decade that development is a highly social process. The role of peers in socializing young people in sexual norms, attitudes, and behaviors is considered an effect of an assumed normative developmental process of adolescence, shift away from families and toward peers. But the types and range of the role of the peers are not yet well understood. Peer networks have, over the last decade, been examined as a complex method of socialization shaping sexuality development through a number of mechanisms. So, hooking up. In the article, they wondered if people actually still were doing hooking up, and they considered or kind of laid out that hooking up was getting with someone or being with someone and not being in a meaningful, connected relationship. And they found out that while half of sexually active teens had sexual partners, they were not dating. Those having sex outside of relationships were partnering with friends or exes. So these young teens were actually hooking up with each other and not in relationships. And they were people that they've actually had sexual encounters with before. With romantic relationships, they found out that female couples, well, male and female couples, followed 21 with this study, and they were between the ages of 14 and 21, and they were dating for at least a month. They found that kissing and desiring a romantic partner correlated positively to relationship satisfaction and commitment, as well as variations in associations between sexual intercourse and relationship qualities by age, whereby being younger was negatively associated with frequency of intercourse and relationship quality. So, one study assessed or addressed intimacy in adolescent romantic relationships and evaluated it as a possible positive motivation for sexual relationship, hmm. or for sexual behavior. The media plays a big part too because the media has long been a potent source of sexuality information for young people. And we know that this was an issue back between 2000 and 2009. So you can imagine if this study was done again, how media and social media, um, the impact that it would play in sexual behaviors. And because basically that's where they go to get their knowledge. That's where they go to look up things. Social media has taken the place of going to a trusted adult or older sibling and your parents, and you just Google everything, or you find a video about it, or somebody has already started a blog about it. So um, now I think that society and socializing plays a very huge part in sexual behavior. So, our second journal, entitled Gay Straight Alliances, Inclusive Policy in School Climate, LGBTQ Youth's Experiences of Social Support and Bullying, by Jack Day, Jessica Fish, Arnold Grossman, and Stephen Russell. So, LGBTQ youth face hostile school climates unlike heterosexual youth. 21% of students reported being bullied, which leads to the questioning, if there should be more support from school staff and administrators. Positive student teacher relationships tend to lead to greater school engagement and academic performance. Teachers are the link between school policies and direct interactions. School sponsored programs such as the Gay Straight Alliances and school policies that support LGBTQ students improve school climates and have less psychological distress and depressive symptoms. Students who experience bias based bullying have poorer mental health, greater substance abuse, and higher truancy. Schools with policies and programs in place have less victimization and have more support from classmates, teachers, and administrators. It also poses a lower suicidal ideation. One research is needed to carefully consider how GSAs and LGBTQ focused policies cultivate safe and supportive school climates for all youth, and how experiences of LGB and transgender youth may differ within schools. So, this study, the participants came from 3 Cuban cities in Northwest, Southwest, and the West Coast. The ages of the participants were between 15 and 21, and they were racially and ethnically diverse. The measures of the study was the homophobic bullying based on gay, lesbian, or bisexual, and gender based bullying based on gender or sex. The results found that the youth had lower odds of experiencing frequent homophobic bullying in schools with LGBTQ focused policies compared to lesbian or gay youth. Bisexual youth had lower odds of experiencing homophobic bullying, and compared to cisgender youth, transgender youth had 2 times greater odds of experiencing homophobic and gender based bullying. Additionally, youth who indicated their assigned sex at birth as male were almost twice as likely to experience homophobic bullying compared to those who were assigned female at birth. So, in conclusion, this article, schools can serve as an important context for LGBTQ youth to gain access to supportive classmates and adults who are sensitive to their unique needs and experiences. The findings that youth perceive more peer and adult support in schools with GSAs and LGBTQ focused policies are timely, and new measures of school success are considered in relation to the implementation of the Every Student Succeeds Act. Schools that implement both GSAs and LGBTQ focused policies may be especially effective at improving school climate for LGBTQ and all youth via reducing bias based bullying and strengthening social supports within schools. Here are a couple of resources for anyone who knows students that are facing bullying, or they feel out of place, they don't feel like anyone understands them. We found some resources that you could click on the links and it'll take you directly to the page where you could read more and get some more information if you feel that you know a student that needs help. I think one of the things that draws these, or one of the major similarities in both of these journals, and it was even noted as a limitation in one of them, that we don't know the type of relationship or the closeness of the peers that are referred to in both cases. And I kind of feel that the role of the peers in both of these articles plays a major part in these cases. For example, in the first study, we were talking about peers and sexual socialization. We talked about how socializing helped determine the sexual norms and the attitudes. Hey, if you're in a school where sex is cool and as they say, everybody's doing it, your peers are encouraging you. Just like if you're at a school that does not have LGBTQ policies um, and awareness, if kids are going around harassing you because you were born a male and you would like to identify as a female, and that you have those kids that feel like, oh, I can pick on you, that it sets the tone. It's like the peers are going to follow whatever they feel is cool. So I feel like these children are looking for acceptance from their peers. They're doing things to feel accepted by their peers, to feel that they are, in tune with what's going on with society. And this was 2009. So imagine how different it really is now in 2022 with we spent 2 years at home, or a year and a half at home with COVID. And once children actually got out to getting back into school and being around peers again, it's like, hey, um, it's a whole new different level of peer pressure. So I really think that when it comes to sexuality, what these children see on TV, what they see in their communities, what they see in movies, what they see is what they believe. It's not whether it's right or wrong anymore. It's not religious beliefs. And some children are raised in religious households and backgrounds, and they still, that doesn't mean that they don't have homophobic feelings or things of that nature. So I honestly believe that within these two articles that the media and the peers and the support groups and communities play a big role in the outcome of these studies.